And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at a game called Compound It. This is from Dice Hate Me Games, and it's from the lab of Darrell Louder, it says. Now, Compound It is a game about chemistry, which I think some people are like, oh, you know, chemistry, because chemistry is not everyone's favorite subject in school. However, I am of the opinion of, yes, a different theme. Now, how true it stays at a theme, we're going to look at in a second. But I'm all for people trying new and unique themes out. You know, it doesn't have to be always trading in the Mediterranean or zombies. This is a cool, interesting theme. Hopefully it works that way. Hopefully it's a fun game. We're about to find out. Okay, first of all, we want to note here that you're seeing the periodic table, but this is essentially, well, it looks really cool, and it's full of cool colors. It's essentially just a scoring track. Although, that means you'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you get up to 56, come down here. Although games only go to 50 points. I suppose you could play one that's more than 50 points. Here's a start player token, which is pretty cool, wooden key. And down here, we have an example of sheet that each player will have. Now on this sheet, at the beginning of the game, you're going to draw 4 random elements. You have 4 spots to keep elements. So here we have 2 oxygen, 1 carbon, and 1 nitrogen. And you can see the colors here. It also tells you right next to there how many of each color are in this bag that you'll be drawing from. So some of them, like sulfur, are much rarer than others. There's only 5 sulfur in the bag, while there's 30 of the nitrogen. You're going to be using those to complete the different elements over here, the different compounds. Like, for example, hydrogen peroxide is 2 hydrogen and 2 oxygen. Over here, you can see this calcium cyanide is a calcium, 2 nitrogen, and a carbon. So that's what's needed to complete them. If you complete one, it's going to give you that many points. So you can see this one here gives you 6 points. This one here gives you 6 points. Some of them are flammable. You can see the little flames on here. That shows how many times, every time a fire happens, and you're going to be drawing cards from the deck, and occasionally you'll draw a card that says lab fire. When that happens, you have to put one on every one of these that's flammable. You'll put one on, and when it reaches the number of flames on the bottom, it basically explodes. The elements will fly to adjacent compounds. So you have to be careful. These are usually easier to do and worth good points. The problem with them being that, of course, they can explode. When you complete some of these, they will also give you a reward. These give you a piece of equipment, or sometimes they cause something that you can make one of the compounds that's not flammable become flammable. So there's different things that can happen. Now, everything that you do is based on your player card here. Each phase of the game, and players will be taking phases together, although you'll be taking them in order of this person, whoever has the key, and that will pass around the table. And first you have your discovery phase. This means you're going to draw from the bag and add. You don't do it the first turn, but as time goes by, you're going to run out of these. And so you want to draw. The number that you have here is how many you draw. So as this number increases, you will draw more from the bag. The second thing you'll do then is you get to place tokens out here on the board. Basically what you're going to be able to do is you'll be able to place one of your claim tokens on something, which means only you can score from that. Now, if no one has claimed one, anybody can score from it if they put the last element on. But other than that, if I claim this, only I can score from this if I complete it. And as you move this up, you have more claim tokens that you can play. And if you get it to this middle spot, you get a free journal, which lets you, whenever you complete one of these, you get to take an element back from it. Then you get to move elements from your board to the different compounds out there. You can move them to your own, you can move them to somebody else's, it doesn't really matter. The number of elements that you can move is marked here by your research track. Now, when you complete one of these elements, let's say, for example, you complete hydrogen peroxide. Once you complete it, you're going to score 6 points, but you also, because it was a blue element, you get to move up the discovery track, because the discovery track is blue. There are blue, yellow, and green elements. Instead of moving up one of those, you can decide to move up the lab element. When you do that, you'll take this marker here, move it over to this spot, and now you have a spot to store 5 of the different elements, then 6 and 7. So you can have 7 different elements that you can store, which gives you more options. As I said, there's also different pieces of equipment that you can get over the course of the game. For example, the graduated cylinder lets you move one of your discovery tracks up per turn and another one down. At the lab cube, you have a one-time thing where you basically can discard that to become the lead scientist, the person who goes first. Or the safety goggles, you can, at the start of the research phase, you can discard to discover and discard extra discarded elements at the phase end. So you can pull from the bag multiple times. So each player also is going to start the game with a wild token, which is worth 2 points at the end of the game, but you can discard anytime to pull a resource from the bag of your choosing. And also, when you're putting elements out once per turn, you can trade 3 of a kind for 1 of your choice from the bag. And that's basically the basic game. It's not a very difficult game. You're simply increasing your tracks, trying to score the most points by completing these elements. When an element is completed, you'll pull it off and you'll put new elements from a deck of elements that are on the board. Now, if you want to play a more advanced game, you can take the bottom row out, and there's these cards here where there are much larger elements here. These elements are really cool, actually, and 2 players can claim those, and both score the points. Although you'll notice that these elements can blow up. They have different, there's different kinds of elements here. Some of them have special abilities, and some of them take, like this one here, ammonium carbonate gives you 12 points. But that is a lot of resources that you have to place down before you score it. And other than that, the gameplay is remarkably similar. There's also a special board and a special way to play if you are only playing with 2 players. Okay, Compounded. First, let's talk about the theme. I mentioned the theme at the beginning, and theme is a big deal for me. What Compounded does here is it uses a chemistry theme, and in some ways it's very accurate to that theme. I mean, with the different elements that are used, we have water, which is H2O, and after that, I start getting hazy in how the different compounds are put together because I didn't pay as much attention in chemistry as I should have. Even though I laughed a little at the scoring track being the periodic table, that's cool, and that adds some theme to me. And any game that allows me to go up in different research tracks always has me a little bit interested. This game actually is what I would classify as a light/medium weight Euro game. And that's a category of games that I think that there is not enough of. Examples of that would be Ticket to Ride, or one that this actually reminds me of is Pastiche, where you take, in Pastiche, you take different colors and use those to produce paintings. That's another great theme. In this one, you're taking different elements and you can do it. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the overview, in the review, is as you draw these resources from the bag, you can trade. And the rules say you can trade anything. You can trade resources for tools, and you can trade them for future promises and different things. You can't trade points, but you can trade pretty much anything else. And that's really cool, and it has an aspect. Now, the trading isn't like a major part of the game, but it's I shouldn't say major. It's not a dominating part of the game, but it still is pretty big. It's still there, and it adds a cool aspect to it. And there's also sometimes you're like, why would you ever put resources on someone else's compound? Sometimes you can trade that. I'll put a resource on your compound, and in the future you help me out here. Or sometimes you just throw resources out because you want to get them off your board and get different resources there. My only complaint about Compounded is that I think it's too small in a sense. I wish that it was just a little bit bigger. I wish the tool pieces were a little bit bigger. I wish the whole thing was a little bit more grandiose, that it actually came in one of my favorite size boxes, the square boxes. But that's a very minor thing. I think that the graphic design is excellent. Of course, it's Dice Hate Me Games, so that's kind of an obvious thing. I think that the theme, I think playing with these cards, play that first game, get it out of the way, and then add these in immediately because they're so much fun. They have that aspect of working together, but at the same time, not really. The fires are cool. There's different ways to put the fires in your deck. You can, the original rules, you put them every 9 cards down, or you can just put them in randomly so you never know when a fire is going to happen. Each player, I forgot to show this, has a little fire extinguisher that you can build, and you have to basically put 3 resources on it, 2 oxygen and a carbon, and when it's finished you have this, and you can prevent one of your resources from being destroyed. But if you don't use this by the end of the game, it's worth points. So you have to kind of balance that out, and you also have to build it as the game progresses. It's not a complex game. You don't need to know anything about chemistry to play it at all. And I think it really fits a niche in which there are not enough games being put out there. See, I could get people to play this. It's like, oh, it's about chemistry. And I could see some people's eyes glaze over and like, no, it's really fun, you know. And other people who like chemistry be like, oh, that's really cool. Let's try it out. So this is a good game. I very much recommend it. Compound it.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door!
Shut the door!
Shut the door!